Hello. I'm gonna talk about books today. I'm not gonna talk about any books though. That's not what I meant. I'm gonna talk about books today, but I'm not just gonna talk about any books. I'm gonna talk about my favorite genre. No, my favorite sub-genre in the genre. There's so many reasons why second chance romance is like my favorite sub-genre. In all of these books, I've felt those like super high highs and those super low lows that like make your heart kind of hurt a little bit, but I actually love that feeling. It's not super easy for me to get that feeling from a book. I've read so many romance books where I've just kind of been bored and I haven't been hanging on to every single page like I was for most of these books. So recommending these, I'm not just recommending books that are in a certain trope. A lot of these books are my all-time favorite books ever, favorite romance books ever. I'm pretty excited to show you what these books are after just hyping them up so much. And just be prepared to love them. The first book I'm going to be recommending is 7 Days in June. I talked about this one because I read it for I read part of it in my 7 books in 7 days video. This book, I feel like the best ways I could describe this book, it's like emotionally raw. Their love story is so intense, and I say that specifically about this book because it's very different from, I'm pretty sure, all of the other books here. So Ava and Shane first meet in school. I think it's high school. They both are struggling with a lot of personal, and they're both kind of like outcasts who are drawn to each other, and they spend 7 days together. And so this book goes back and forth between the flashbacks of the 7 days they spent together when they were younger, and literally only 7 days they were like each other's everything, which you would think reading a book you're like, that's like not really believable, but with the stuff that they went through together, it is believable, and it gets you to that point where it feels real and genuine, and you can just understand where both the characters are coming from. They're very close for those 7 days until something happens and it tears them apart, and they don't see each other for another 15 years. 15 years is a long gap for a second chance romance. So when I first was reading that and getting into the story, I was like, how is this going to work? Because 15 years is a crazy long amount of time. Like, I wouldn't believe love lasts that long, but without seeing someone, I just didn't know how it was gonna work until I read it and I saw 15 years later, and they're both successful writers. So they meet at this like literary writers event that they go to 15 years later. All those years they've been reading each other's writing, and the thing is, the guy in Ava's book is based off of her experiences with Shane, and then for Shane, Shane's writing is based off of Ava when she was younger. So they've been writing about each other for all those years. Even though they were apart, they became each other's muses, and so they never really left each other's lives. It's one of those things where the characters just accept that that person was the love of their life, but they're not going to be with them. This book has a lot of heavy themes and stuff that you just really need to be mentally prepared to read about. It does also have like comedic things in it that are super funny. I actually laughed a lot in this book. This is one of those books that if you annotate books, you'll find yourself underlining things constantly. I highly recommend checking this one out. It's super good, but I did want to finish with saying that it is really important to read the trigger warnings and stuff for all of these books, but this one as well. A lot of these books have like some sort of traumatic or like incident, some big thing that tore them apart, and I just think it's really important to check the trigger warnings for all these books if you feel that you could be triggered by something. Next up, I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite books ever. This book, You Deserve Each Other, is so important to me. It's one of those like core books for me in romance. There's no big thing that tears these two characters apart. These two characters are engaged. They're like a year away from the date where they're supposed to get married. The wedding date is approaching. However, since they decided to get married, so much has changed in their relationship, and at this point they don't want to marry each other anymore. They're just like done. So when it's set up, it seems like they hate each other when it first starts, and they like both don't really want to get married, but they don't want to look like the villain because they don't want to be the one to like call off the engagement and like be the one who takes all the blame and all the heat from like family and friends. There's like a big message in here about the way things seem and the way things actually are in a relationship, because it talks about Naomi, the girl in it. I can't remember the guy's name because I always forget a character's name. It was Nicholas. How could I forget about Nicholas? Naomi is always like posting on social media and stuff like things are great, but actually they're terrible. Her and Nicholas like do things to specifically upset each other and get on each other's nerves. They just like really aren't there for each other. They're not on the same team at all. They're not just on different teams, they're team captains of the different teams. Nicholas has this whole thing going on where he can't say no to his mom. It's just like super frustrating for Naomi because he's always choosing and taking his mom's side even if it hurts her, and he just doesn't know how to stand up for himself. Like, these are qualities that are unattractive, right? And she has unattractive qualities too. Naomi is super petty. She does the pettiest stuff, and she's like constantly self-sabotaging. They both really got on my nerves in the beginning of this book. I was like, what is wrong with them? Like, I was laughing because this book, another thing about this book is it's hilarious. It's so funny. I was smiling and laughing because while they like hated each other, it was hilarious. And even when things started to change, it was still such a funny book. There's light-hearted aspects to it, and it feels like the most real romance book that maybe out of all of these. I'm not really sure, but this one feels like realistic because it is embarrassing for these characters. Like, they're being ridiculous, and it's like all these little things where it's like I could see those tiny little things adding up in real life. So these tiny little things start adding up in their relationship, and they start to resent each other because they're not like communicating about it. And I mean, I literally have never been in a relationship, but I feel like that is realistic. But after all that being said, because all of that stuff, yeah, it's not like, it's funny to read sometimes because it's just, the author's hilarious, but it's also hard to read sometimes because you just want to like see the love story. But it makes the ending in like the middle of the book so much more enjoyable because both of these characters, Naomi and Nicholas, have to work so hard to like be each other's someone again. They both have to put in the work and commit to each other, and also have patience with each other's flaws and look at each other as someone that they love again in a more like understanding, patient, and kind type of way. You see them become friends with each other again and start to love and cherish each other again and stand up for each other again and just like be there for one another. I just like could talk about this book forever because I really love this book so much. All right, next up. The next book I'm talking about is another one of my favorite books ever, Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. So I feel like everybody and their mother has read this book. This book is everywhere, and that is for good reason because when I first read this book, I was shocked at how vulnerable and just moving it was, and I wasn't expecting it to do that to me, to make me feel so much. I really couldn't stop reading this one. Like, what is better than two book lovers getting together and then just like falling in love, like childhood friends to lovers, and then something happens and they break apart, but then they run into each other randomly in the city, and they both have different situations going on, but they both are still in love with each other even if one of them is denying it. You know what I mean? So I'm really looking at this cover and I'm like, why is there a rope connecting all these? Like, I don't understand what the rope is for. There's a new cover actually for this book, and it's quite cute. Elliot and Macy's love story is just fabulous, okay? They are soulmates, and you cannot tell me otherwise because they're 100% meant to be with each other. And oh my god, like reading this, I felt a deep sadness, and this is the first time I ever really felt with this, like reading a romance book and not like a fantasy romance. I think this was, at least. Like, don't actually quote me on that because I think it was, but maybe I might be lying to your face and I don't actually remember. This is one of those books where afterwards I felt a deep pit in my soul because I was like, am I ever gonna have this? Like, is this ever going to be a thing that exists for me? And then I just sat there in silence and I stared off and I thought, you know, maybe not, maybe not. And am I okay with that? No. And so one day, am I just gonna settle for someone and then be with someone who I don't feel this way about, and then I just like, I'll never feel this way about anyone, and then I'll always wonder, is there someone out there who I could have felt that way for? And then, oh god, oh no. So it's one of those, and I highly recommend it because it's literally will tug at your soul and your heart in the best way. It's so well paced, it goes by so fast, but a lot of these are like flashbacks from the past to current times. You Deserve Each Other does that a lot less than this one and 7 Days in June. Next up, we have a book that, like Love in Other Words, in the setup from childhood friends to lovers to like estranged and then together again. I was just like, wait, is that plot twist? But you know, of course they're gonna end up together in the end. So, and it's also like they're neighbors and they see each other on like this certain time of the year. For this book, Every Summer After, which is the next book I'm going to be recommending, they see each other every summer. So Sam and Percy meet each other when they're younger at this beach house. I know it's a lake house, and they're neighbors at the lake house. Percy doesn't have like very many good friends. She actually has some terrible friends that are actually bullies when she's younger. Percy is adorable. Let me just get it straight. Kid Percy, she was like making bracelets, like friendship bracelets, and then when they're younger, one of the first things Sam like asks her to do or like talks to her about is he asks her to make him a friendship bracelet, and then she's like, what colors do you want? She gets out her kit and she's all excited, and he's like, I want one like yours. And I thought that was so cute. And from that moment on, I was smiling. Whenever it had a flashback, I was like, they're the cutest thing ever. The flashbacks, that was 1000% my favorite part of this book. It could go either way. Like sometimes I like the present time better, sometimes I like the flashbacks better, sometimes I like them both the same. In this book, I 1,000,000,000,000% liked the flashbacks the most. I still like the present time, but flashbacks were just so cute. I loved how they were like both so unsure. Like it was just so sweet. So anyways, it goes through flashbacks of them falling in love, and then once they're older and that thing happened that like tore them apart, it's been 12 years since they've seen each other, but then Percy gets a call that Sam's mom died. She gets a call from his brother, Charlie. So now after all these years, she's going back to the lake. She's changed a lot through these years. She's been through some things to cope. So she comes back and she's confronting the fact that she's seeing Sam again. It just goes from there. But yeah, that's basically what this book is about. I highly recommend it. It was so good. Such a great, worth the read book, and yeah, I recommend it. I wanted to do all these books like together, so this is the next book that kind of had that same format where it's like childhood friends to lovers, and then estranged for a while for some reason, and then coming back together. I think I talked about this in like my last 2 videos, or like I finished reading it in my last video, I'm pretty sure, but I didn't really talk about it. So now's the time. Infinity Between Us. If you read either Every Summer After or Love in Other Words, and you want another book that's similar to that, I really recommend The Infinity Between Us, because it's that same type of format. There's 2 families, the Mitchells and the Seabergs, and they stay together at a beach house. And at this beach house, they spend every summer there, and like Violet, always looking forward to summer. Think like the summer I turned pretty. Violet and Will are like best friends. They've like always just been a team besties. That changes one year, and this is another one that goes between the flashbacks and current present times, and they end up falling in love, but something happens. Shocker. And they just don't see each other for 5 years. Yeah, they spend 5 years not talking to each other at all. They kind of are in that stage of life where they're growing up, starting their lives, and then they see each other again because Violet is going back to the beach house to try and sell it. She runs into Will there, who is fighting to keep the beach house. So she agrees to spend 1 month with him, where he's trying to convince her to not sell the beach house, where she, at the end of it, if she like wins or whatever and still doesn't change her mind, then she can sell the beach house, and he like won't try to stop her or anything. So that's the premise of The Infinity Between Us. This one is quite an emotional read as well. Like there's a lot of things that they are dealing with separately, especially Violet. She has a lot of stuff going on that she has to sort through. I felt like it was a really sweet, vulnerable, lovely read, and I loved it a lot. So it starts off with Ellis as kind of the main character, and they live in the same town. Ellis comes from a family where I guess they're known for like not having a lot of money and being involved in drugs, and her mom is just really a not present mom at all, but she still like kind of tries to control her. But then there's Easton's family, and his family is super welcoming to Ellis, and they kind of like take her in, and she stays over at their house a lot. She becomes close with the whole family, but her and Easton just are especially close. They really do give me like that soulmate vibe. They become each other's best friends, and they're just like inseparable, and they both clearly grow to love each other. But then something happens, of course, that tears them apart. For only a year, she's sent to finish her senior year like in California. She has to finish her senior year of high school like halfway across the country. She comes back because Easton's mom is throwing this like big party, a birthday party, and so she comes back because she was in California with one of Easton's brothers. Her and him are like really good friends, and they were in California together. They both go back for the mom's birthday, and now she's confronting Easton, who she has not talked to for this entire year. So when they see each other again, they're not on good terms. It is super awkward sometimes. The whole family like knows what's going on and they're like so over it. The timeline flashes back from them falling in love when they were not that much younger, but younger, to now when she comes back, graduated, and they're both graduated, and they had this like dream of traveling the world together, and now everything has changed and it's just super tense between the two of them. Ellis is trying to figure out how to even be around the family again, let alone Easton. She's just really discovering where she fits in the world. And a big part of this book really is her self-discovery, because she came from a certain place and then she grew close to these people who are so different than what she came from. And then she moved all the way to California, and she just had so many different seasons in her life that she's really like grappling with who she wants to be and how she identifies with herself with the world around her. I really loved reading about her and her perspective. All that being said, I highly recommend reading Some Mistakes Were Made. There's something so genuine about the way that this is written. I don't know what it is. I don't really know how to say it, but it just feels so honest. That's what it is. So yeah, I just had to give this one its fair amount of raving about it because it really was that good. I have one more book that I may or may not be talking about. We shall see, because after I read it, I'm gonna come back and say if it's worth the read or not, but it's gonna be Before We Were Strangers. So I've heard a lot of good things. I'm gonna read this one and come back to you and tell you if it's worth it. I bought this book specifically for this video, but of course, you know, I gotta make sure that it's actually good. I just wanted to film this part in advance because I don't know if I'm gonna have time to film the whole video later. It's me, but the next day, and I came here to say that I was going to read Before We Were Strangers to see if it was good enough to put in this video, but I'm just not in the mood to read this. I've been seeing posts lately. They're basically talking about how when you have a creative flow or like an urge to do something, to just do it because it has a shelf life and it won't always be there, and then you won't always feel like doing it, which sounds obvious, but it's kind of something that I feel like I haven't lived by, because I'm big on like making to-do lists and like planning things out and planning my reading even. I haven't been reading the past 3 days, and I think it's because I've been trying to have myself read this book, but I'm just really not in the mood for it. And there's like other books that I want to read, so I don't think I'm gonna make myself read this one, but I'll probably end up doing like an update or a reading wrap up where I talk about this one anyway, so it will still have its time to shine. I just am not adding it in this video. I'm not really worried about it. I just didn't feel like making myself read that when I wasn't in the mood. So yeah, back to the outro that I made yesterday. So that concludes my second chance romance book recommendations. I hope that you love these books if you read any of them. I certainly loved all of these books. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to see more book videos from me, of course. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.